Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this first seminar in our TAPAS, Tackling Air Pollution at Schools Network seminar series for the academic year, the new academic year. My name is Paul Linden. I'm based at the University of Cambridge, and I'm the principal investigator of the TAPAS network project. For those of you who are new to these seminars, this project is one of 6 funded by the Natural Environment Research Council, 6 networks funded through their Clean Air Strategic Priorities Fund. And the role of TAPAS, the role of these networks is to bring together interdisciplinary groups to discuss issues and network around and assess research activities in air quality and air pollution. And TAPAS is focused on schools. And this is the 3rd of our seminar series. We ran 1 or 2 last year and have stopped for the summer. And so welcome back to those of you who are returning. It's my pleasure today to introduce Dr. Colin Gillespie. He's the principal air scientist at the Scottish Environment Protection Agency. He's a botanist by undergraduate training, but then did a PhD in atmospheric chemistry at the University of Newcastle, and has worked on the effects of air pollution on biosystems and the stress induced, and has been at SEPA since 2004. And he's going to talk, as his title shows, on citizen engagement through citizen science, which is something that we're very interested in, particularly with engaging both the whole school community, from parents through to pupils, and their evolutionary path. So I'm going to hand over now to Colin. Before I do that, just one housekeeping measure. Please keep your microphones on mute as usual, and please put your questions to Colin in the chat. And we will take them at the end of the talk. And so now it's a pleasure to hand over to Colin for his presentation. Thank you.
Hi, thanks very much. So this is going to be a sort of presentation through our citizen science pathway. I'm just having a look there. Right. We started this back in 2012, and what we did at that point was we did a series of short projects just looking at what citizen science resources were out there, what sort of programs of work could be done. It was really a very broad couple of sort of initial projects, and just looking at how we could take things forward. And we didn't really start the actual engagement with citizen science until about 2014, 2015. And this is, to be honest, this is a small section of our work. It's been done together with myself and Graham Applegate, who's a policy officer within SEPA, and works with me very closely on this. Okay. We believed right at the very start, we believed that working with citizens in a citizen science theme, it really entailed working in partnership. That was not just because of resources, in terms of what resources SEPA have, but also because it helps to deliver that sort of consistent message across, not just what SEPA wants to say, but what local authorities and Scottish Government at the time wanted to get across, and what kind of messages local people were interested in. We wanted to make sure that we utilised the resources that other people had already developed. There's no point in redeveloping the wheel, but at the same time, build resources that we could share out to the rest of the community. That way then, it allowed us to look at delivering multiple benefits And I mean multiple benefits in the sense that you'll see the kind of partnerships that we've built up. It's not all about air quality, but it's about getting the message across, or it's about getting the actual actions across that are there to reduce air quality around the schools. So sometimes we'll do things that haven't got a pure air quality theme, but the actual underlying message or the underlying action is there to improve air quality. And that's why we think of multiple benefits. And communicating is really important, and we've got different forms of communicating the messages which we've built up over the years, and I'll show you some of those as well. When I say that we link with wider air quality objectives, that is because local authorities have action plans, and we were quite keen, because of a statutory body role that we have, that we were quite keen to ensure that we were working towards those air quality action plans that local authorities had. So there's a whole ream of different elements there. And then on the top left picture is actually East Renfrewshire's Cycling Action Week, where we did some work around air quality in schools. The focus again was on active travel, but it was part of their air quality action plan actions. So it fitted both bills really. Okay, our path started, or our journey started with actually 15 to 18-year-olds. This is a very busy slide, so I'm not really expecting you to read it. It's just an idea of what we'd done and how we came about thinking about working with young adults. We were asked with the Science Centre and Young Scot to help run a jam weekend. And the Venture Jam weekend really was about looking at engaging with young people, and they're giving them a quest to look at improving a topic area, and the topic area was air quality, to develop business plans and then to take those business plans forward for improvement measures. So we looked at a pre-jam taster event, and we tried out a few different methods on how to get the message across, or to communicate the message to a younger audience. We tried bringing in planning authorities to talk about how planning affects air quality. We brought in specialists from Glasgow University to talk about the chemistry around air quality, and that was part of the Glasgow Science Festival. So it was all about trying to get the information out to the young people on the importance of air quality. And then that moved on to the weekend work, where we split the groups up, and they all came with their own ideas on how to improve air quality across Scotland. Those groups were then formed into small teams, and the small teams built their ideas into a business case, and really good because they took them to VentureFest, which is a business platform for entrepreneurs in Scotland, and they presented their business case to those entrepreneurs, who then voted on the best one. So it got the message really in there, but also got them to think about their cases. And one got taken forward, and it was a class-based app that was very similar to emojis, and it looked at air quality in a sort of fun way, but also promoted air quality improvements. So what you did was you went round identifying what the air quality sources were, like cars, etc. Take a picture, and then you put a different emoji on that picture, and you get points for the best emoji that you did. It was just a very simple app, but it was to get the message across there. We then looked at how we communicate that, and social media is an excellent place to start. So we got a very large light show across Glasgow that you can see in number 4 there, where we beamed across the River Clyde, which just happened to be in front of the STV and BBC studios. I'm not saying we planned that, but we beamed it across there, and we managed to get quite a lot of publicity that way. So that gave us a better idea of how to communicate to the outside world on what the issues are that we were looking to promote. Okay, we had to think about how to capture the younger audience, and it's a different way in which you try and communicate with them. It's a different way in which you have their captured attention. So it's basically in the classroom. There's no escaping. Once the doors are shut, that's you get a captured audience, and it's really about creating a teaching package that's around what the school activities entail. whether it's in primary schools or secondary schools. And so that's one of the things that we started to think about. And we started to think about what kind of ideas we could put forward to present the information that we wanted to, what kind of educational resources are we looking at. We were thinking about the kind of experiments that secondary schools would have to do in chemistry labs. We were also thinking about the kind of things that primary schools might be interested in, those kind of visual aspects of air quality. So you can see at the top there's a picture from one of our video stills, which is on one of the actual in-class experiments that we've developed, and the one below it literally just shows kids how air pollution might disperse across an environment, and they just create that environment in a bowl of water. It's really quite simple stuff. Then we were looking at what other hands-on interactive materials we could create. So we looked at building online resources. So we have a map at the bottom there, which is actually an interactive tool that the kids can use to look at air quality if they change the traffic flows around a sort of a made-up school. So each of those points around the map is a school location, whether it's on a busy bypass road or whether it's in a city centre or an urbanised area. And what the kids can then do is they can change the traffic flows around those schools and just see how that impacts on air quality around the school. We were then quite keen to think about, well, how are the kids going to actually monitor air quality? And that was quite a challenge to us. So we had to think about what kind of monitoring equipment is out there and how we could show it. And things that we were interested in was pick up drop-off points, because those are the key areas that are of concern for most school kids. So the first thing we did was we built a teaching package. We teamed up with a local authority who'd already sort of trialled something very similar, but it was aimed at primary schools. We engaged with the teachers, so it was actually teacher-led. They built the package for us, and we passed it through Education Scotland to ensure that it met with all the curriculum outcomes that were required for schools to obtain. We also looked at trying to encourage that sort of movement from primary school education through to secondary school education. So the education package itself has a primary element, and then it has a secondary school element, which has a secondary science and a secondary geography element. And we are looking to move on to computing and stuff, and you'll see that later on in the presentation. We made sure that it was fit for purpose. So we got it created in some of the most deprived areas in Glasgow to ensure that the language that was used, the types of videos that were introduced in it, were all fit for purpose in the sense of it engaged everybody, and it wasn't just aimed at those of the sort of creme of the classroom. We wanted to make sure that it challenged the learners and it was relevant for their day-to-day purposes. And that it was engaging and enjoyable, and the activities itself were enjoyable, or you'll lose interest. So the first thing that we looked at was actually the air quality sensors, and we teamed up with Edinburgh University at the time, and one of their departments built as an air quality sensor, and we ended up with 10 of them in the early years. These were very crude sensors, it must be said. They picked up on PM, and they had a NOx sensor in them, but to be fair, the NO2 levels that we were getting were pretty crude. So we were kind of looking at, well, how we can present that data, even though we know it's not fantastic data. How can we present it in a way that still engages with kids? And so we kind of came up with algorithms to ensure that it picked up the pick up and drop off points, and that's what the sort of things that we highlighted to the children. But again, it's something that they have control of. They put it up outside their schools. They know exactly what they want to collect and where to collect it. So that's getting engagement, and rather than us doing it for them. But we also ensured that it fed into the other activities that were in the teaching package, whether it was with part of the geography teaching, where it was looking at land use and planning, etc., or whether it was within the primary schools, where it looked at promoting active travel or campaigns that the kids might want to run at the time. I mean, young kids are are absolutely amazing ambassadors. We've used them for time and time again for climate change aspects, and I know that when my children come home from school and they've been getting taught something, they certainly nag you to death that's what they believe in, and you have to follow suit. So we wanted to make sure then that we captured as big an audience as possible. Our air quality sensors have been out to well over 30 schools now over the last few years. We have about 150 hits per month, and those are long-term hits to the teaching package. So we know that there are about 150 classrooms or thereabouts using the teaching material, because we measure it in the sense of anything over 15 minutes tells us that they're using the videos for experiments, or they're using the worksheets, or they're downloading some of the teaching material for the teachers. We have created these hands-on monitoring programs around school, so they can look at developing a series of in-class teaching material to help with their own campaign, and then there's a whole range of products at the other end that help promote that end campaign. There's different ways of presenting data. It's not all about the science. There's different ways of presenting the information, and we've got within that package different ways in which the kids can present the information in a fun way. And you'll see a couple of them later on. One such fun way was getting one of the Scottish ministers, this is the Environment Minister, to one of the schools, and the schools had created these placards and a big banner talking about air quality around their school, and to say she was heckled, yeah, I think our aide was panicking at the time, because these kids had surrounded her and they were wanting the roads closed to traffic, which actually they finished up achieving. They had one of our air quality monitors out. They heckled the minister, they got involved in Clean Air Day, and they petitioned the council, and they managed to get the roads shut off during their school days. It's good to be recognised. The package that we built around got a national recognition as part of the Air Quality Awards, which is always good to know that you're on the right track. Okay, expanding the material. You can't always just sit on what you have, so we were looking at ways in expanding the material, and we teamed up with Clean Air Day and Edinburgh City Council, and we created this banner competition, which is a great way of getting the kids interactive and putting their message out there for parents to see. You can't miss an 8-foot banner when it stares you right in the face. And so what we trialled was that the kids thought about the air quality issues around their school, how it relates to their own activities, and these are the kind of material that came from that. We therefore adopted it within the teaching package. So we now have a sort of slush fund that sits with printers when local schools want to do a banner competition. They run it in the classroom, they pick the best winners, and we get a couple of banners put out across their school. Some of them have got clear slogans, others are really nice artwork, and you'll see some of that artwork later on. Right, it was time for us then to start looking at replacing the sensors. As I said, we got ones bespoke from Edinburgh University. They had ran their course. They really were starting to they weren't fit for purpose anymore, and we were looking at different sizes, different types of units. Things that we were really keen on was the cost of the units, because it's schools. We don't charge for any of the teaching material, it's free. We have the sensors in-house, we send them out to the kids or the schools. That's all free. There's no point in charging people to do citizen science, because you won't get interaction in the same way, or we felt you wouldn't anyway, and schools are really tight for budgets. They had to be simple to use. So the electronic diffusion tubes are the most simplest to use. You just tape them to a lamppost and walk away. You have to have access to the data. The kids need to know what the data looks like, but I'll show you later on that giving them full access to data doesn't always work, and you've got to have a bit of interaction with them. You have to be reliable. And the size is really important because kids can't put up stuff. Accuracy, we don't think accuracy is the end all. A lot of people are getting hooked up on low cost sensors and how accurate they are. We don't use them for that kind of purpose. We use them as a material to inform and educate. So anything that gives you peaks and troughs, you'll see later on, is informative to the kids because it hits the right on what they're looking for. If I was keen on accuracy, then most of the schools that I go to would achieve air quality objectives outside the school gate. That's not going to achieve anything. What they want to do is link it to the pollution source, and then they can sort of say, well, oh yeah, air quality is really bad because of, they don't really care whether it hits 40 micrograms or 15 micrograms. They just want to know that it delivers a message that they're interested in. So we took, unfortunately, we took receipt of 5 new Zephyrs just as lockdown occurred. So these Zephyrs have been sitting in my kitchen up until early last year when they actually finally got out on use. We also trialled AQ meshes, and we've already pre-ordered some of the electronic diffusion tubes because we're quite keen to trial them. But we did run a trial session in SEPA where we had about 10 different air quality sensors against some of our reference sensors just to see how they performed. And to be fair, some of them you could do your lottery tickets out of them, whilst others were very good. So there is a big sway in the market as to the accuracy of some of these sensors. Okay, so the first time we tried a proper monitoring assessment was out at Balfron. We managed to persuade Stirlingshire Council to purchase 10 new Zephyrs, and we borrowed them for a study that we were doing at one of the secondary schools. Balfron's a little village. Most of the kids are bussed in for the school. I think it receives something like 15 buses every day. And so the 6th year geography student was quite keen to look at the impacts of the buses on air quality around the village. So working with the 6th year student, she set up a monitoring programme across this village. And you can see that we've located the sensors around the school, around the pickup drop-off area of the school, but also on the main street and on the main access roads to the school. So the child was very keen to see how air quality was impacted as and when the buses were coming through the town. The other interesting fact is that on the access road was the local bus service, and the local bus service was using what can only be described as a non-Euro bus. It certainly was producing more smoke than a tractor. You can see in the graph that we were easily picking up the morning periods and the afternoon periods, and in every single day the afternoon periods were always greater than the morning ones, and that's because the buses would come along, they would sit in the school grounds, and just the engine would be idling away because the bus driver doesn't want to get cold, and so the pollution levels would just start to build up. Now that's a primary school there and a secondary school there. Some of the levels, these are NO2 levels, so you can see that some of the levels were excessively high in comparison to what background was. The children then, the primary school then looked at an anti-idling campaign to ensure that not just the buses but also the parents didn't idle outside the school, whilst the 6th year geography student, she started to petition the council for cleaner buses because the school buses themselves were easily pre-Euro class buses. You can see from the picture there that they're certainly old looking buses. So she petitioned the school for cleaner buses because she felt that, you're sitting on a bus for half hour going to and from school. Not only that, you're exposed to what's outside whilst you're getting on and off the bus. So the council took that forward as one of the actions that came out of this particular study. I said before, how you present the data is really important. Now I'll go back the slide. The slide before, I showed you that we highlighted the pick up and drop off points in that data. Without doing something like that, kids have got no idea what it means. The same goes with these are Zephyrs. I think we put out in primary school in the south side of Glasgow. I can't give children that raw data as it is, because they wouldn't be able to pick out what the interests are or what interesting facts are coming out of it. This is a typical day. There is a peak in the morning and a peak in the afternoon when the kids are getting picked up and dropped off. It's there. You can see it in the raw data. If you put it into hourly averages, you can see it much clearer. On that particular day, I think it was a Thursday, there was also an elevated level outside the school from about 6:30 onwards. And again, if you put it into hourly averages, you could quite easily see that there was an elevated peak between 7 and 10. Now, I went back to the school and I said, we found this interesting peak as our out-school activities. Yes, that was prom night. So all the nice big limousines and fancy cars that were dropping kids off for prom night caused a little bit of a pollution level outside that school. Now, this is the south side of Glasgow, and it is really quite a residential area, so it's not close to any of the main roads. The other interesting thing was how you look at the raw data and then how you look at the average data. You look at the raw data, you've got maximums there of 35 micrograms. If you then hourly average that, you've dropped them right down to 17 micrograms. That's how I'm saying the accuracy of the data is not really something that we were that concerned about. We were more concerned about how do we show the kids these peaks and troughs, but also demonstrates to you that the kids, when they're getting dropped off, they're getting exposed to higher concentrations than what's maybe getting recorded elsewhere if you're using a different method of recording that data. So it's quite important to sort of explain these kind of things to the kids, and we worked out a worksheet that looked at averages, which was equivalent to what the kids were doing already in P7 in that class, where they were doing averages, highs and lows, max and mins. So we did a worksheet for them. So that was another thing that we included in the teaching material on how to look at data. Other interesting things about the air quality data, which is sometimes unexpected, is when you look at air quality issues, and it's not just all about the pickup drop-off points, NO2. This particular school was in a deprived area in Glasgow, so it didn't have a massive big pickup drop-off issue. There wasn't a lot of cars dropping children off, but there was a lot of parents congregating in the school, and so we were doing we had put out the sensors, and we weren't getting much in the sense of peaks and troughs in the morning and afternoon, but every single day we were getting a PM peak on the 2.5 element of the sensor, and every single day it was hitting around 3 o'clock. So we asked the kids to go and investigate that. They were keen to look at air quality. They thought it was going to be all about their traffic and outside the school. And then when they went out to actually look at it, they found out that actually it was parents standing, congregating around the front of the gate, smoking and chatting, and the sensor was picking up that PM from their smoking. So the kids then changed their ideas and thought, right, you know what, we need to do an anti-smoking campaign as well as an anti-air pollution campaign. So that's what the kids then changed their approach to. And I can imagine the parents getting well badgered by the kids with regards to, you can see a peak in the afternoons every single day when we're walking through the gates. Okay, identifying those wider environmental issues. I just want to highlight this. I'm not going to dwell on it in very long details, but the 6th year student in Balfron had noticed this elevated PM for a few days and was wondering what it was, and then it dropped off. And I just happened to have, Graham happens to stay quite close to where Balfron is, so I phoned him up and said, why is this dropped off? It was about 1:30 in the morning. Oh yeah, it started chucking it down, it was raining. So we looked into it a little bit further, and the kid identified that there was a Saharan dust event that was occurring across the rest of the country and across the rest of the network. And within her monitoring network in Balfron, it was very clear that come that early evening, 1 o'clock in the morning, the rain started washing off, and that was it. The transboundary event ceased. So that just demonstrated to her that the air quality comes from different areas, and it's not just all local traffic generated or local generated sources. And sometimes you get these transboundary events. And it made us think, well, actually, we could do some nifty wee tools that show bonfire night, for instance. So we built some visualization tools that looked on the entire network that you can now see bonfire night popping up, which is really quite interesting. And we built a wee video around that as well. So that's now part of the teaching package. Okay, we joined forces with the European Environment Agency. They were doing a citizen science project just a couple of years ago. They started it and it ran for 2 years and finished just before lockdown occurred. It consisted of 10 different countries. It was a great way to share knowledge because each country had either their own ideas on how to do citizen science with kids, or some countries didn't have any to start with and were quite keen to get involved. The whole aim of it was to deliver behavioural change towards improving air quality. And we were quite keen to then link with local authority initiatives because, again, it's only the two of us, and we were quite keen to make sure that it tied in with what local authorities were doing at the time. And because it was a European project, quite a lot of local authorities were quite keen to get involved. Just give you a sort of flavour of what other countries had did as part of this project. We have the Irish EPA, which set out diffusion tubes, and they deployed them nationally, and they also had PM monitors because there's still quite a lot of peat burning that goes on in rural Ireland. And so they had looked at air quality around a lot of schools in the whole of Ireland, in the whole of Southern Ireland. And this generated a good working relationship with the Irish EPA. Then we had Spain, who was looking at flooding an area with diffusion tubes around a school to promote walking to school and to show that the local transport infrastructure had an impact around the vicinity of the school. So there's different methods employed. We expanded our partnership to include Cycling Scotland and also to include Living Streets. And the reason we did that is because they have the same outlook for us. It is promoting active travel. It's trying to get people out of their cars. And so it seemed logical that, okay, it's maybe not an air quality specific, but the theme is there. So that's why we teamed up with them, and we recruited local authorities that were interested in joining our European Environment Agency project. We managed to get about half of the Scottish local authorities involved in it in one way or another. And this is one of them. This is East Renfrewshire, and they linked it to their active travel campaign and Beat the Streets. They were running Beat the Streets. I don't know if anyone's aware of that, but it's a little card that you get, and it promotes kids to go out walking. So they ran it with Beat the Street, and at the same time, we put out an air quality sensor, and we started to present to the kids the data to show them, again, the morning drop-offs and afternoon pickups. And one of the schools had a nursery, and it was showing you the 2 o'clock pickup for the nursery as well, which was quite interesting. And we were just demonstrating the diurnal pattern of air pollution in the school, around the school and around Glasgow and things like that. So it was very good. We then ran the poster campaign again, and they got banners outside their school to promote the activities that they were promoting during Beat the Street. Glasgow City Council, they came on board, and what they wanted to do was to run a national or citywide banner competition, as well as the teaching resources. We put out sensors at about 3 different schools. One of the other schools closed off the streets with Living Streets, and so all the schools put forward their banners, and the little boy at the top was actually the winner for the city. His banner competition winning drawing was used as part of their city transport strategy front cover. But we also then projected all the two runners up and the winners onto city buildings across Glasgow, just to promote the competition that we were running, but also to link in with Clean Air Day. So it was the Thursday before Clean Air Day, and it was there just to show off the children's work, but also to promote air quality. The city used it as part of their promotion of the low emission zones as well. So it was really good. It was a really good citywide approach that we took. Okay, this is Angus City Council. So this is after the lockdown. Finally got rid of some of these sensors that were sitting in my garage. Angus City Council were quite keen to do look at closing off the streets around 4 of the schools in the area. So I gave them the 5 sensors that I had. They put them out across the schools a couple of weeks before the school holidays, and then they were going to close off the streets for a few weeks and then carry it on after the school holidays. It's a good way of working closely with the local authorities to get across the message that they're wanting and to engage not just the schools but also the councillors, etc. And so this was run by, I think it was an external consultant who helped run the programme for the schools or for the council. But we gave them the data. We showed them what it looked like before the streets were closed off. We showed them what it looked like after the streets were closed off. And the first Mondays, sort of roughly when people were still driving in and out of the school gates to take their kids, and so they were getting advisory notes given to the schools, to the drivers, to tell them that the streets were actually shut off. You just have to be cautious in what the data is actually used for, and I say that purely because this is particulates PM, and we know that there's many sources of PM, and it's not all down to transport. So we try to explain that to the council as well, as just make sure that what you're picking up is really what's happening, and what you're promoting is really factually as correct as possible. And I said that because this PM episode happened across all the sensor network, and I wouldn't have expected that. These are pretty rural schools, so unless everyone's getting picked up and dropped off in tractors, I wouldn't expect to see such elevated levels unless it was a regional event, and that's what we thought was happening. But it served the purpose, and it got them to close the school roads off during the 9 o'clocks and the 3 o'clocks. Okay, it doesn't need to be all high tech. I say that because we have quite a lot of different activities in our teaching material that just emphasises the points that we want to make. There are ones there that use food colouring, for instance, where the kids go through a daily routine and add drops of food colour into water to show how it changes, and it expresses that you're contributing to the bigger picture. And what the kids then do is they pour everyone's water into one big jug, and they're asked, who's going to drink this dirty looking water? Nobody. But the point is, you all contribute to air quality issues, and you all have to breathe it. So it's just a way of getting the message across. The other one is Vaseline on square bits of paper. The kids create a grid, and they do the monitoring around their schools, and it's there just to pick up visible dust or visible particulates. Some of the kids have used this really good. One school out Stirlingshire way used it, and it demonstrated that the road closest to them was the heavily polluting road, whilst the country roads around the other side of the school were less polluting. So it's just, again, it's getting that message out there. And then there's the artwork. We have a poster as well that the classes can fill in with their own information, their own artwork, and again, it's visual. That's what kids like. They like to get their hands dirty. We've teamed up with Science Centre, and the reason we've teamed up with them is because they are really good at getting out there. They have indoor labs within the Science Centre, but they also have outreach programmes. And the Science Centre built as an exhibit that sat there as part of the How the Body Works sweep of exhibits, and it sat there showing you all the health effects of air pollution. There was interactive screens on how to do the city model. It was quite similar to what we have in the teaching material. There was how to build your own monitor, that sort of thing. So that to me was a very good way of getting into an audience that are not in the classroom, and how do we get that across. And actually moving on from that, so that exhibit's now closed, but moving on from that, we now have a mobile one that's ready to go out to the local authorities. And again, it was done with the idea of the low emission zones to promote air quality and to obtain information from the local public as part of the consultation process. I have place standard questions that are set in there to obtain direct questions and answers from the local public when it comes to consultation responses, for instance. That exhibit was just finished just as we went into lockdown, and unfortunately, it's kind of sat collecting dust, as we could say, for about 12 months. But it's now been set up in the green zone for COP26, so that's really good that it's going to be used. But it's still there for local authorities to use. And kids like to get interactive. They like to get their hands in there. So this is them using the air quality model that we had built in, the interactive model, and it just you shift traffic around the city, and it just shows you how, again, how it changes pollution. So what have we got planned next? I said to you that we've been working pretty closely with the Irish EPA. We were looking at extending our low-cost sensor network. So I'm hoping that the electronic diffusion tubes come online soon and that they're usable for what we want. Because to me, that'd be extremely easy for us to send out, rather than big sensors that I have to go and put on lampposts, etc. You could send out half a dozen of these and the kids could use them quite simply. I know there's diffusion tubes out there, but it doesn't give you that level of detail that I thought was really important, that pick-up drop-off point. It just gives you an indication of where the pollution hotspots are. I thought it was quite good to have that. It's more interactive. We want to expand the teaching material, so we want to increase its scope within the schools and within the teaching curriculum. So we want to include a computing element to it. So we've been looking at how to build your own sensor, and that would, to me, that would link in some of the more environmental elements, and I'll show you in a wee minute what we've been doing with regards to that. We've taken on the simple paper, square paper, pick up and suit sort of experiment, and we put that into the teaching material. We just don't want kids to get lost. We want to keep them interested and to carry on with their citizen science programme. So what we started to look at was how to build your own sensor. And we've been working with the Irish Environment Protection Agency, Dynamic Earth in Edinburgh, and the Science Centre on how to use the Raspberry Pi boards to look at building air quality sensors. Now, we all know that the data they generate is not there for air quality objective purposes. It's there for showing the kids that they can monitor their own environment. It's there to link to other STEM skills, and it's there to improve computing skills such as coding. We've got primary schools and secondary schools. Primary schools can look at coding in a different way to secondary schools. There's lots of drop-down menu type coding that's out there that can be used to program these Raspberry Pis, while secondary schools can look at a wee bit more detailed coding, which looks at increasing the scope of the Raspberry Pis, whether it's full environmental sensors or just the air quality side of things. But it gives them a chance to look at interdisciplinary subjects, such as climate science, computing science, geography. When we built the teaching package, the one thing teachers said is, for it to meet the curriculum of excellence, it has to be across all different disciplines. and so we're trying to expand on that. This is our first prototype. It's just got some really simple boards on it that look at environmental indicators, and it's got a simple PM counter on it. We've tried out the coding, and our next task is to now test the concept. So it's heading off to Cork with the Irish EPA, who are going to test it for us, and then we're going to, between us, we're going to build it into our teaching resource. Getting citizen science into the policy streams is really important. If we didn't do that, SEPA would be stuck, because we have to be seen to be driving Scottish Government's objectives in terms of policy outcomes. So Graham and I work very closely with Scottish Government, and we developed the first Clean Air for Scotland strategy, which is why we have low emission zones, national modelling frameworks, etc. And we started to work on the Clean Air for Scotland 2 strategy, which was launched this July. And it has a citizen science element in it, which is really key for us, because it means then that we can carry on this engagement, and it means that Scottish Government have recognised that citizens are important in terms of how you empower them with the knowledge to drive forward policy objectives. So it sits within a whole ream of CAF's 2 actions, which I think is really good. And we'll be sitting within some of the action delivery groups. So again, we'll be driving forward that citizen science perspective at not just SEPA level, but also across Transport Scotland, local authorities, etc. So I'm just going to finish off by sort of showing you some of the key messages that we've been getting from kids when they've been reviewing the programme of work that we've been doing. Some of them identify that pollution is an issue around them and it's part of their everyday lives. Some of them also are very canny in the sense that they can identify that it's something that we all breathe and we just take for granted, and that it's not something you can see, which is why it's never in people's minds. Air pollution has an impact on the health. This was one wee girl who had asthma, and she picked up the fact that things like bonfire night, she has a terrible day the next couple of days after that, and she knew that it was to do with the pollution in the air that she was around. Local areas, short car journeys, something that we should stop. And this was one of the kids who was very keen to scoot to school, and he didn't see the need for everyone coming in their cars. And he organised, in that particular school, he organised a ticketing system where the kids got dressed up as traffic wardens and went out and ticketed all the cars that were parked in the street with fictitious parking tickets, which I thought was quite good. I'm sure the parents didn't, but I thought it was very good. It got the message across. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. And if you want to hear any more about some of the stuff that we have or some of the activities, then please drop us an email. More than happy to carry on the dialogue after today. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much, Colin. What a fascinating tour of that various activities. We have quite a lot of questions in the chat, and I'm going to be rather selective and just pick a few. One was from Sarah West, asking if you can say a bit more about how the school kids access data and the issues that you alluded to with that. What were the issues that came across when they were looking at the data? Yeah,
so I don't know if you've looked at any of the websites that you can access once you purchase Zephyrs or AQMSs, but the data is very much geared at those with a little bit of knowledge. So what we do is we have a Spotfire tool, which is a visualization app that allows you to build bespoke apps around data, and it lets the kids interact with that data. So what we do is we extract that data from the websites and then put it into our own visualization app that the kids can then have interaction with. The other things that we do is we pull out the data and we pull out the key components that we want to show them, because you could put out a 2-week, 4-week monitoring program, and you actually might only get 1 or 2 days where it shows a nice pick up drop off, and you just want to show those 2 days. So we might pick out just those 2 days and send that to the classroom and highlight what they're interested in. But the visualization app's really good. We use it for everything. We use it for our modelling outputs as well as for air quality data. So it is there for specific for getting the information out.
Yeah, thank you. A question from Douglas Booker. It says, it sounds like the children have learned a lot about air pollution during these campaigns. Have SEPA learned anything new about air pollution? And if so, what?
Wow. I think actually I would say what the one thing that we've probably learned, not about air pollution itself, but probably about engagement. And we've used some of our methods of engagement with other areas within SEPA, such as within the flooding and the water environment. I think that's one of the key things that have came out from this kind of work.
Yeah, so Heather Price asks a question, do you have any data regarding the children's experiences? For example, what they've learned, bits they particularly enjoyed in taking part in any of these activities? And if I can add my rider to that, I just wondered whether these teaching packages, as well as the children's kind of experiences, what about the teachers? So how well were they received by them? And did you have feedback with them in developing them and so on?
Yes, so the teachers themselves, we went through a learning centre, which it was run by the North Lanarkshire Council, and it's their teaching learning centre, and they helped us develop the teaching package. So it was actually teachers within North Lanarkshire that developed the package for us, so they know what the curriculum was. They developed what research programs that could go into it, what activities could be done, and went through all the. I don't recall what it's called, but there's an area within Scottish Government where you have to get your experiments sort of verified so that they're safe within the classroom. So they did all that for us, and they got all the check sheets done for us. The feedback that we've had from other schools, we went out and trialled it. Like I say, we trialled it in a deprived area. We also trialled it in a private school to get a full range of how it works. And the feedback we got from that was pretty good, and we put that into expanding on the package. And then as it's been rolled out or used, we seem to be getting more and more teachers coming back. The only thing that we lack is promoting it. We just don't have enough resources to do that. And we're relying on revisiting, and we do get quite a lot of revisits. So yeah, it seems to work in that sense.
Yeah, thank you. A question from Peter Fleming, who said, how do you communicate the issue of data uncertainty when talking to non-scientists?
That can be, I tried that a few times, and to be honest, you get blank faces. So I try and reduce that level of uncertainty as much as possible, hence the reason I pick out the areas that are of interest and don't leave it to the whole class. Like there's no point in giving them all the data and then they realize, well, why is NO2 higher during the night than it is during the day? What do you say to kids? Oh, well, it's drifting across. It's not. Kids just don't get it. So yeah, you've got to be picky in what you show them.
Right. I think we have time for just one more question, and I'm trying to find. And I know the one I was going to choose. You've talked. So did you? Everything I've seen seemed to be outdoors. Have you done anything indoors, monitoring indoors classrooms?
No, we haven't. But there's a scope with the build your own sensors to do indoor stuff, if that's what the kids are interested in.
Right. Okay, well, I think in view of the time, it's time to draw this seminar to a close. I'd just like to conclude by thanking you, Colin, very much for a very interesting talk. And I must say it's a very impressive range of activities. And And it's encouraging, I think, how you've been able to get the profession and the children involved. And it's a lesson to us. And I hope we'll take an opportunity to learn more from you as time goes on. And to all the audience, thank you for attending this first in our seminar series for the autumn of this year. There'll be one next week. I'm afraid I'm not organized enough to be able to tell you who's speaking, but turn up anyway. I'm sure it'll be interesting, and I hope to see you all next week. And again, thank you very much, Colin, for a very interesting talk. So goodbye, everyone, and see you next week.